This is the intersection of money and power. I am Karabole Tlatla. You're watching Political Capital. Now, according to the independent fact-checking organization Africa Check, you and I have spent 29 billion rands bailing out the ailing national carrier SAA between 1999 and 2017. And in October last year, National Treasury allocated some 5 billion rands towards SAA. Add on to that, last week, the carrier finalized a further 3.5 billion rands, which it is meant to use until the end of the financial year in March. So how much more money do we have to throw at SAA before it can turn itself around? And the man behind the turnaround plan, its CEO, Vuyani Jarana, was halfway out the door last year due to a lack of support for his plans. So, what's changed since he wanted to leave? This is my interview with SAA CEO Vuyani Jarana. Mr. Jarana, thank you very much for your time, as always. Not too long ago, in fact about a month or so ago, there was stories making the rounds that you wanted to leave this organization. 6 months ago, I had an interview with you, and I began by asking you if you regret taking this job. The question still applies.
No, certainly. I don't even regret taking the job.
Did you want to leave?
No, I didn't want to leave.
What happened?
Well, there will always be some of the challenges in the organization. There will be dynamics in terms of how you look into the strategy. So there will be views about how you approach things. And obviously what's critical for me is always to make sure that SAA comes first all the time. So to the extent that we are aligned around the purpose of delivering the strategy, we'll work together. But if there is a sense that we may not be aligned that much, we should be very open to ideas about what happens to the organization.
I want to ask you about how that situation, actually being caught in the middle of that situation, feels. On the one hand, you have a shareholder represented by Minister Pravin Gordhan, who seems to be supportive of the cause. And on the other hand, you have the man who holds the kitty to the purse, Mr. Tito Mboweni, who seems to be of the opinion that the airline should be shut down. How does that kind of comment make you feel as the incumbent CEO?
Yeah, initially it does. When the comment was announced, it was a bit challenging for me because it was in the middle of our work that we're doing in the West Africa to push for growth for the business, in particular for the West Africa bloc, because it's an important bloc for us. However, when you listen to the message that the Minister of Finance gave, many people picked up the shutdown only. He said shutdown and then launch a new one. Albeit whether it's launched by government or a mixed form of ownership. What's key in what he has indicated is the difficulty of transforming an airline that's encumbered by legacy contracts, whether with the labor unions or suppliers. I think that his message got lost in translation, and immediately after that, there was a good engagement between ourselves and the finance minister, and we found one another in terms of the path for the airline. So I think his message got lost in translation. What I picked up from his statement is the difficulty to transform an airline that's...
But Mr. Mboweni continues to say that the airline should be shut down in private.
Well, I can't speak for what he may be saying in private, but in our own engagement as a shareholder, we get his support. We continue to engage with the finance minister as well as DPE, and we get support from government. Both ministers are supporting the plan for the airline.
No CEO has turned around this cranky old machine in 20 years. What makes you different?
Well, I think if I look at it at the play we have got, we look at the strategy, we look at the willingness to execute. We are making hard decisions in difficult areas where many people have not wanted to venture into. We are addressing the market purely on commercial principles, and that's what we are continuing to do, because if you don't do that, and you create a false economy. So that's the hard decision we have to make. I mean, we made decision around London. London is profitable today. So it's not a popular decision to say you reduce frequencies when others are growing. But if you understand what we call a sustainable growth rate, then you begin to accept that you will take a pause before you push for growth again. So that's the difference. The team here is focused on commercial delivery.
You speak about commercial delivery, but of course, the other part of the false sense of it is that it's not based on SAA's commercial ability. It's really based on government's intervention, the ability for you to secure government guarantees, bridging loan facilities, as you have just secured the 3.5 billion rands. But that is not sustainable, is it?
Well, this is why we're here, is to build a sustainable airline. Unfortunately, when you come to an organization that's challenged like SAA because of its history, how it has traded before, and how it has addressed the market, you're going to have to live with all those vagaries of history. But what's important for us is how we are addressing the future. So we have to take cognizance of the past and making sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes. That's why we're very aggressive around commercial delivery. That's why we're very focused on building skills. That's why we're unequivocal about a strategy that's based on profitability and growth. So that's the difference.
But essentially, SAA is running from a loss-making position, and some of those things are still applicable today. We want to know, in terms of the difference, the wide gap, if you will, between your revenue and your overheads. How have you managed to streamline this?
So we have said that from the beginning that we are coming from a negative position where we are making losses for many years. And we've got a plan that shows that over the next 2 years now, we are going to be reducing the gap between revenue and cost and bring ourselves back to profitability.
What does that mean? Does that mean reducing overheads? Does that mean cutting jobs?
A number of things.
How's the voluntary severance packages coming?
So it is a number of things. It's looking at supply chain, taking out the onerous contract, extracting value from the kind of procurement process of SAA. Already we've made big decisions around SCM, how we buy products and commodities and components for SAA Technical, for example, making sure that we buy from the players who can give us the best price, that is the best price for the product. So SCM changes. So we have to look at operational efficiency and agility at SAT, turnaround times for aircraft so that aircrafts don't stay longer on the ground. We need to keep them in the air because of the maintenance cycles. Of course, we're going to have to relook the organization, the size of the organization, the form factor, to make sure we build a much more commercial focused organization. So already we've done some of the work, for example, in terms of the pilots, where we have had access pilots. All we did, I went through the road shows across the world looking for partners who would be interested in taking our pilots, reducing the pilot community by 122 pilots already. So giving us benefits of 315 million rands per annum. So already that talks to restructuring the organization. We have to look at methods and mechanisms that are not invasive in restructuring the organization first, before you go for the difficult decisions.
But I mean, at the rate in which South African Airways is burning through cash, I mean, some fact checkers estimate that you burn through 450 million a month. That really means that 3.5 billion is not going to get you very far.
Well, so all in the plan. I mean, so in the plan that we had focused on, we said, well, in this year it's going to take us 5 plus 3.5 billion rands to get to the financial year end. So we've got the 5
That's
billion.
March.
That's March.
So
yes.
you need to go to the lenders again after March.
Well, of course, the plan we had put in place from the beginning. We said to the shareholder and to the public at large that to turn around, firstly, SAA is fixable, that we are clear and unequivocal. But of course, it depends on a number of things. Dealing with the capital structure, the balance sheet, then making sure you bring skills to the business. It will take a 21.7 billion rands to do this. Part of it is a 9.2, but also it's a 12.5 working capital requirement. So
let's separate this money. 21 billion rands is a lot of money, and that's what you say you need for the turnaround plan. How much of that is legacy debt? Break it down.
9.2 billion rands.
And that 9.2 billion rands matures at the end of the financial year in March.
Yes.
So that means shareholder, i.e. government, i.e. yours and my money, has to try and avert a potential crisis that could potentially sink the airline if it's not resolved.
Well, of course, that's why we're engaging with the lenders to actually make sure that we are able to extend the 9.2 billion rands to longer, have different payment terms to address that. So lenders had asked for two things. One, what they call a path to debt reduction, that the debt levels at SAA must be reduced. That's firstly, over a period of time. The second thing, they are looking for a path to profitability. That means they're looking at the strategy and how we execute. Consistently and in a much more frequent way, we present our strategy, our progress to the lenders to show where we are. So far they like the story because there's a story of progress. We're executing according to plan, we're meeting our performance covenants, which means that there would be a much more positive attitude towards supporting SAA. But of course, it's going to be a combination of both debt reduction, commitments, as well as our ability to execute strategy and performance.
So you said you needed 21 billion. Out of that, we extract this 9.2 billion,
absolutely,
which will mature at the end of March, at the end of the financial year.
Yeah.
So essentially, that leaves you with some 12 billion odd.
Yes.
You have 2 years left on your 3-year turnaround strategy. Are you still on track?
On track, we are on track on the strategy significantly. Keep in mind that on the 12.5, we already got 5 billion rand from government already this year.
The MTBVS.
The MTBVS contribution. If you look at the plan, I can only talk to half-year results because we're going to Q3 now. I'm not at liberty to talk about because we must still go through to the board. We're ahead of our plan in terms of the delivery at both revenue as well up to the reducing the losses, and that's what we continue to do. So we don't see ourselves missing our own covenants for this year. For the year coming end of March, we should be able to meet those commitments. At the same time, we have to reduce the losses for 2019-2020. And we'll only make losses of about 1.9 billion rands. Then the year after, then we break even. So we're staying on the program. We made commitments. This is the path to profitability. You're starting from a negative position. You can't jump in 1 year from a negative 5 billion rand loss to a profitability. It doesn't work like that.
Fair and well, but this is still our money that still has to bail out SAA. And for most people who still will not be comforted by the fact that they're hearing that we need to put up more money in order to sustain this. So I will ask you direct, why, in the words of Finance Minister, why is a shutdown not the most viable thing? Shut this machine down and start it all over again.
Look, you must look at SAA. I mean, in terms of its contribution to the economy, a massive contribution. I mean, connecting the continent.
Some might say it's extracting from the economy.
Well, I don't think so. I actually think that the multiplier effect of SAA is much more significant. It does not mean that multiplier effect should be delivered at a loss to the shareholder. Unfortunately, that's a history we've had to live with. I can't do much about history of the 9.2 billion rand, but I can talk about what we are doing into the future. We gave a very clear plan to say you move from 5 billion rand losses, we're going to reduce it to profitability over 3 years, subject to the provision of the adequate financial wherewithal to deliver on this. And if you do that, then you've got a business that you can actually grow and it can move into profitability. I think SAA has got that, all the makings of
Fair enough, but there will be small comforts to South Africans like myself who are squarely aware of the fact that I don't know what's the consequence if your plan doesn't work out. And the consequence most likely falls back on the taxpayer.
Well, the point we make is simple, is that there's a plan we've got in place. We report to Parliament, we report to the shareholder on a quarterly basis. We're showing a trail of progress. We're making hard decisions that many people would be uncomfortable to make. But because most of these decisions are no-choice decisions, if we are going to be able to deliver to the commitments we've made to the shareholder and the public. So far, we've been delivering according to plan. We are making the hard choices, and that shows the board and the management that's very committed to see results.
That board, it was rumored to have left you, felt like it doesn't give you adequate support for your turnaround plan. Who explicitly believes in your turnaround plan?
So we've got a board that is facing the same direction with the shareholder.
Do you feel they're giving you support now?
I feel the board is giving the support to deliver on the plan. I think it's a difficult plan to execute on. It's a plan that you have to be very, very strong and focus on what really makes sense. You can't cover all grounds. You need to look at what's really going to give the biggest impact today, but on a sustainable basis. So in that process, so far where I stand, I feel the board has this. I've got the support of the board, I've got the support of the shareholder. SAA is a very contested business, if you like, from a public opinion point of view. Every day you have people who are going to raise issues to say, well, is this business going to be turned around?
It's a public entity which is costing the public.
And what we are doing in response, we're giving evidence, we're giving artifacts of progress. I think what's important though is that there's a point where we need to move beyond this point of agitation and say, will it work, will it not work? We're showing a trail. We can't force belief, but we can give evidence. But at times you get a sense that people are so stuck to the old SAA, to the point that the trail of evidence of execution that we're putting on the table and being very transparent. I mean, we're a very transparent board, very transparent management team. We talk about issues at SA openly because we've got nothing to hide.
So how much more does Vuyani Jarana still need to turn this cranky old machine around? And what happens if he fails? Good question, right? More on the other side of this break. Welcome back to Political Capital. This is where money meets power. Vuyani Jarana has been in office some 14 months now, and his 3-year turnaround strategy is supposed to turn SAA around in 2021. That is 2 years from now. But what are the consequences if he doesn't succeed? And how is he going to curtail the cash burn rate at the airline? Here's the other side of my interview with SAA CEO Vuyani Jarana. Why would bankers be afraid of taking more debt in a form of government guarantee as is presented on behalf of SAA? They seem to be of the opinion you're addicted to that, and that cannot be a good thing.
No, I think it's not just about SAA broadly speaking. I think the banks are talking to an all SOC funding, and government should be able to answer to that question in terms of the level of exposure. I think if I look at what we are discussing with SAA and with SAA with the lenders, is a simple thing. They are saying the level of debt at SAA is high. It needs to be reduced. So guarantees are no funding. Guarantees will not reduce the debt. You need equity injection to SAA to reduce the debt. At the same time, we as management and the board must commit and execute on the strategy so that we can bring the path to profitability into reality, and that's what we are doing. So I think the debate is less about lack of belief on SAA's plan today, because they look at it, they support it, they agree, but they're saying reduce the debt, give us a path to reduce the debt, or they say.
Lenders or money managers, they're well aware of what's a good path and what's potentially risky for their money. They get paid to do that, to worry about that. And when you look at SAA, I mean, the stormy clouds ahead. Right now, we're sitting on top of a strong rand, but we all know how volatile and fickle it can be. The oil price seems to be seesawing. Right now, maybe not terribly out of favor, but you can't even hedge because you're not cash rich, you're cash poor. So what can you do about those kinds of conditions to minimize those costs?
Absolutely, but of course that's why it's important to have a capable management team that's going to be able to fight the fight.
What does that mean in actual terms?
In actual
terms,
what
will you be able to control?
So if you look let's talk about currency.
Okay.
So if you look at the currency, the revenue streams for SAA are almost 50-50 denominated on hard currencies. That brings a natural hedge into the portfolio. So when the rand goes this way, you get the upside on the revenue side, and then the cost becomes another issue. So you have almost a 50-50 hedge on the rand itself. So already that's one tick, because our level of exposure from a revenue mix point of view, it doesn't put us in an awkward position. If you look at the oil price, for example, so one of the key things, you have to make hard decisions. I mean, we look at the oil price now has moved within range, but we also know that once it moves beyond, say, $84 a barrel, you start having to think about how you reconfigure a network, how you take decision around your fleet. If you've got your older fleet, your 4-engine aircraft, you may have to make a decision quicker.
The potential to mess up your calculations, because a lot of your business is forward bookings.
Yes, but that's the nature of the game. All airlines are exposed to this. It's about how you manage this, how you manage your pricing, how you manage your fuel recoveries from a pricing point of view. So there's going to be there are swings here. So when the rand moves in one direction, you face the downside on fuel recovery in terms of when the fuel price move in the one direction, you pick the downside in terms of the recoveries on the forward bookings. But if it moves on the other side, you shift that and do the recovery. So it's about managing the business on a very, very active and proactive manner. So that's the role of management. That's what we need to do.
I'm going to conclude by looking at you, because ultimately you are the front-facing side of management and this airline. When I read a story that you were considering leaving this airline, I thought to myself, what kind of frustrations lead a man to that? So right now, as we're talking, I'm asking myself, are you going to be the man who's sitting as the CEO in 2021?
I have a 5-year contract with SAA. I have every intention to see it through. We are bringing skills, we're giving commitment to staff, we are executing, we're bringing strong partnerships, Pan-African and globally, to actually build this airline. So that's my commitment, that's the focus. And keep in mind that the reason why I came here to contribute, and that goal hasn't changed. And that's why I'm focused, and I'll be here to deliver the results.
What happens as you run into other frustrations?
Well, part of being here is actually managing those frustrations and making sure that you work with the shareholder and the board to actually see through the issues that are challenging on the horizon. We are a very resilient team who are focused on delivering results. We are also very clear that the commitments we are making to the shareholder, to the board, and to the public at large, we are going to have to see them through. So part of seeing them through is to deal with difficult issues in the best way possible so that we can actually create a path to success.
You as a CEO, your legacy would be made, especially at SAA, if you are able to actually bring a turnaround to this cranky old machine, as I call it. But the question must still be asked. You would like to leave a much more sustainable path for the airline, I'm sure. One, as I do, attend state capture inquiry, and I listen to, speaker after speaker speak about the cancellation of profitable routes like India. And I ask myself, why are they not on now? Where should we be maximizing? I mean, for instance, some say that it's a faux pas that we chose Johannesburg as a regional base for SAA, that we should have had a stronger focus towards Cape Town, for instance. What is your vision? What would you like to do, apart from the debt situation and the legacy issues? What new thing would you like to introduce?
We have to grow the airline. So we have to
What does that mean?
It means we must open new routes. We must look at Asia Pacific specifically because we're underrepresented there. Our only gateway is through Hong Kong. We believe that Hong Kong is overtraded. We need to find the balance in the gateway to Asia Pacific region, find the right partnerships to make sure that we have good presence. We can battle competition that between South Africa or Southern Africa as well and Asia Pacific. So that's one of the key areas. The US market is a very, very important market to us. It loves the brand. We've been there. We've been doing road shows. We have to find new ways of getting to the US. West Africa to the US to Europe, still underserved. There are opportunities there for us to participate. So this is what we talk about growth from a pure international business. Yet, continentally, it's going to be partnerships. So there will be no winner takes it all. You're going to have to make sure that you partner with regional airlines to be able to stitch it together and deliver a very good proposition.
Those people that you want to partner with have already undercut some of your business elsewhere on the continent. The same African partners you're talking about. They've had a lead up, largely because they're not dealing with as much legacy of debt issues, and they're able to do more.
Absolutely, and to be honest with you, there's no one partner. So you build partnership. For example, what we're doing in West Africa, specifically in Ghana. So we have the partnership with the Africa World Airlines, a very, very smart regional player there. So we're able to deliver passengers from the US straight to Sierra Leone, if you like. So using a combination of our own aircraft and the small gauge, they use a lot of Embraer aircrafts there. So that's the kind of partnership we're talking about. It's not just only the big guys coming together. It's about enabling the smaller operators. If you look at SA Express, for example, a sister company, you look at Ailing, franchise partner of us, They provide a feed-to-feed network in the southern, in sub-Saharan Africa, if I may put it that way, for us regionally. So there's no reason why we shouldn't do that for West Africa. There's no reason why we shouldn't do the same in Central Africa, starting to create an airline of substance in the continent. So that's where we talk about alliances, building partnerships and alliances on the one side. Let me go to this thing about the Johannesburg hub. I think we have to be fair to the past leadership of SAA, because strategy is about timing. Johannesburg hub was the right strategy for many years.
Prior to the World Cup, some might say yes.
It is, one could say so. But I think we have to be very careful that we don't look at the benefit of hindsight and say, well, this was all wrong. It wasn't wrong, it was right.
But we feel like it's not agile. It needs to be agile.
Fair enough. That's what
what worked prior to the World Cup wouldn't necessarily work.
Absolutely. I think the only criticism you can have is to stay with the strategy when the market has moved. That's why we are constantly scanning the market, assessing it. And by the way, the issue of Johannesburg hub strategy, we are talking about it. It's not a case of Johannesburg versus Cape Town per se. From a country point of view, we should be talking about South Africa versus East Africa, Middle East hub, how we aggregate, become the transit path for tourism from South America right to Asia Pacific. That's when you talk about the higher order goal. That is not just about SAA, it's about home affairs, how you deal with the visa regime, how you make it easy for people to actually come.
How's that political will?
I think it's quite getting positive.
But why is it so slow though? Agility again.
And once you see the presidential stimulus talks about enabling tourism, reviewing visa regime, all those kind of things. And a lot of work is being done by Home Affairs in that regard. But we need to appreciate that the workings of government have to be very consultative and engaging. And what is important is that the framework for success has been set up from a policy point of view, saying promote tourism, review visa restrictions where it makes sense to do so. So we are latching into that from an SA point of view and saying there's a bigger agenda of it's not Cape Town versus Johannesburg. We need to address the Cape Town issue from an SA point of view. But what's important is South Africa losing the hub position
to international
airlines, to East Africa, even outside Cape Town. I mean, we need to talk about, is the hub going to be in East Africa, or is the hub going to be, continue to be in the Middle East? Are we going to lose leverage from that point of view? What kind of policy enablement must we put in place to make sure whether we depart from Cape Town or Johannesburg, but South Africa continues to be part or share a bigger part of the transit tourism?
Well, that's all the time we had for this edition of Political Capital. We are back on your screen, this time looking squarely back at the recent state capture testimony. We'll see you on Tuesday at 6:30. Until then, keep it locked right here.